very kind of you, Rohan, to suggest that I'm the star of this show. But the star of the show actually is this city and the poets of this city. Now, there's a general belief in Bombay, and it's a belief that I think has been spread by over dozens of years and has been said in dozens of mouths, that this is not a city of the arts. It's generally held to be a city of mammon. It's a city of money. It's a city of commerce. It's the can-do capital where people do stuff. It's not the can-make capital. And I'd like to contest that here. I think there is something really fundamentally wrong in our viewing of our own city as a city without culture. One, I remember when the Pukar project, Pukar was run, a wonderful space run by Rahul Srivastava, and I think Arjun Appadurai and Carol Breckenridge were also involved. We found that there were 9 different language traditions in this city and 9 different sets of poets, all writing poetry, all writing prose, all writing fiction, all writing theatre. All of this was well known in other parts of the country, but not in the city. Right? Second, I'd just like to redirect you to the history of this. Where did the progressive artists group begin? Bombay. Where did Bollywood begin? Bombay. Where do Urdu writers come when they need to make a living? Because there's not much money in Lucknow, there's lots of tehzeeb and there's lots of takalluf and there are great kabats. But where are they going to make a little money? They come to Bombay and they write lyrics for Hindi film songs. So yes, it is a space that is unsuitable for song as well as for sense, as Nissim Ezekiel famously says, the poem with which we are starting. But I think it is also time for us to reconsider our way of looking at our city and to see our city as a city of culture. There's a moment of huge culture and cooking. I think the potatoes are burning. Well, not too badly, but sort of singed, I think. And there goes dinner. So I just wanted to say at this point that this is also a Bombay problem. That we tend to do a lot of our own work ourselves, and I'm cooking dinner, right? And I just burn the potatoes. Recollect. And so another important moment that started here is the birth of modernism in at least 2 different languages. Marathi modernism is the older modernism, and some magnificent poets are still waiting for translations. Now, the reason why I think they haven't been translated as much or as well as they should be is simply because translating poetry is like backbreaking. It's the most awful uphill task that you can imagine, because just bits of everything fall off the poem as you translate. Okay, so I did one set of poems. I went mad in a moment of complete madness. I was translating the Bhakti poets with Neela Bhagwat, who lives around the corner, my house in Mahi. And each time we finished translation, we said, okay, this one I think is working. We both have a moment when we knew how much had been lost. So today I do have a dash. I have one poem from the Marathi. I have preferred to use the Bombay poets. And the second language, I'm sorry, that modernism came to in India was in English. And it came to poetry with Nissim Ezekiel, who was, there are many Nissim Ezekiels in the public imagination. There was the very stern and demanding teacher of the Bombay University, and there was the scandalous Nissim Ezekiel, and then there was the Nissim Ezekiel we met in old age, who was the most welcoming and delightful patriarch that you could have had. I remember once saying to Raj Rao that I'm so glad that I met Nissim first as a poet, because he seemed incredibly human, as opposed to say some of the others who were always kind of drinking themselves silly and smoking hundreds of cigarettes a day and doing all kinds of excessive things. Nissim just seemed like a nice, rational kind of figure. Uh, I'm going to start with the Nissim Ezekiel poem. It's a poem you must have all heard 100 times. It's called Island, but it's still such a lovely poem. Island, Nissim Ezekiel. Unsuitable for song as well as sense, the island flowers in the slums and skyscrapers, reflecting precisely the growth of my mind. I am here to find my way in it. Sometimes I cry for help, but mostly keep my own counsel. I hear distorted echoes of my own ambiguous voice and of dragons claiming to be human. Bright and tempting breezes flow across the island, separating past from future. Then the air is still again, and I sleep the sleep of ignorance. How delight the soul with absolute sense of salvation. How hold to a single willed direction. I cannot leave the island. I was born here and belong. Even now, a host of miracles hurries me to daily business, minding the ways of the island as good natives should, taking calm and clamor in my stride. In a way, the thing about modern poetry or modernist poetry, modernist, whatever you want, is how much you also need to be reading the poem on the page in order to get it. Like, consider the fact that he says here, even now, a host of miracles hurries me to daily business. And reading this poem just now, it occurred to me in the pandemic that the miracles that he's talking about are the ordinary, everyday miracles of the city of Bombay. Good public transport, taxi drivers who won't cheat you, just ordinary small things like that make possible the notion of the city. Because what is a city? I remember asking my father this 10 years ago, and my father said a city is a machine for making and unmaking identity. So when you're in the village, you might be Dhondu, and everyone knows Dhondu has one cow, two children, a wife, an aged mother, and a dead. They know everything about it. When you come to the city, you're Dhondu and you're a pair of hands. And that pair of hands might acquire skill, and suddenly you will become the mason or the carpenter. And if you're a good mason or carpenter, then whether you have one cow back home or 10 cows is of no consequence at all. You become that mason or that carpenter. But also, somewhere the name Dhondu has been dropped. So in the time of the pandemic, I discovered how deeply reliant we are on everybody around us. And I thought it was really unfair that we talk about the man who irons our clothes as the ironer, but we don't know his name. So I decided to find out his name, and his name turned out to be Ram. And when Ram came back from his vanvas in the village where he'd gone, because nobody was wearing, work clothes, so there were no clothes to iron, I decided that we should call him by his name rather than, and this is a common Bombay thing, right? We say a Gurkha. We don't know the Gurkha's name. A security, people say, but they don't know the security guard's name. So I think a little bit of this myth of self-reliance that Bombay people have is really been eroded by the pandemic. And so a little more humanity perhaps has crept in, and perhaps a little more understanding of how dependent we are on others. Now, because I'm doing the big boys, I started with Nissim Ezekiel, who's like the biggest boy in town. I thought the next one I would do is the last survivor of the second generation of Bombay poets. And the first generation was Nissim. Nissim was a generation of his own. There was nobody else. But after that came a bunch of very, very interesting people. There was Adil Jussawalla, there was Dom Moraes, there was Dilip Chitri. All these are Bombay, literally Bombay boys. Arvind Krishna Malhotra came to Bombay and did his MA here. Lived in Bombay for a while. There is a wonderful account in his collected essays of him at Pilu Pochkhanawala. Pilu Pochkhanawala was a sculptor. Pilu Pochkhanawalla's house, listening to Adil Jussawalla's poetry has been read by Nissim Ezekiel. I love that moment because, Rohan spoke so beautifully about heritage being tangible and intangible as well. We tend to prioritize the tangible heritage over the intangible heritage. Everybody is worried about the fact that, there is a building on so-and-so street which is going to come down. And it's terrible that those buildings are coming down. I totally agree that it is terrible and they need to be protected. But hey, when you read a poem, when you read a book, that's when intangible heritage is being protected. Because intangible heritage falls away without anyone noticing. At one point, Gopal Honalgire was a very, very, very and then 20 years, nobody heard of Gopal Honalgire. And if Adil Jussawalla had not been constantly reminding all of us that Gopal Honalgire is a great poet, Gopal Honalgire is a great poet, Adil has a kind of manic persistence about him. He actually, sort of shoehorned Gopal back into the public mainstream. Okay, and likewise, Dosibai Jussawalla. Dosibai Jussawalla was one of the first women to write her own autobiography in English. I suspect she might be the first woman to write, But she's certainly, and she claims to be the first Parsi woman to have been educated in English. She wrote a beautiful autobiography that's about 400 pages long. And Adil constantly kept asking people whether they would republish this book. The feminist presses all said that they would, but they'd only do e-versions. And then finally, Speaking Tiger has agreed to it with a little support and help from a wonderful Parsi trust, which has such a wonderful story behind it. But I want to tell you those Parsi stories rather than actually talk about the poems. But I'm going to go back to the poems and tell you and read you Adil Jussawalla's Sea Breeze Bombay. Adil Jussawalla, Sea Breeze Bombay. Partitions people stitched shrouds from a flag. Gentlemen scissored sin and opened people fraying across the country reknotted themselves on this island. Surrogate city of banks, brokering and bays, refugees harbor and port, gatherer of ends whose brick beginnings work loose like a skin, spotting the coast. Restore us to fire. New refugees wearing red wool in the worst heat come from Tibet, scanning the sea from the north, dazed, holes in their cracked feet. Restore us to fire. Still communities stare and reform, and still a breeze cooling our garrulous evenings investigates nothing, ruffles no tempers, uncovers no root, and settles no one adrift of the mainland's histories. You remember being taught about tautologies in school, and tautology and onomatopoeia, all those things by which you were supposed to dissect a poem and say where its magic lay. I think the magic here lies in the fact that people re-knock themselves in this city, but the bricks undo and come apart and spot the ghost. I think that's the secret. The secret is that the intangible heritage and the tangible heritage are one consistent, coherent whole. That if you forget the poetry and you forget the stories and you forget the people who lived in the buildings won't matter. You'll never know what Rajgriha stands for unless you know who Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is. And you'll never know what Watson's Hotel meant unless you remember that it was the site of two magnificent moments in Bombay's history: the introduction of cinema to the city and the beginning of the hospitality industry. Okay. All these are little clues. And say the tangible and the intangible heritage are not hermetically sealed, separate things. They work together. And Jussawalla says in this poem, restore us to fire. You will be plunged into a fire built by this magnificent intellect that sat where Babasaheb Ambedkar sat, in that same restaurant, looking out at that same Kala Ghoda. Arun Kolarkar, the restaurant that gave shelter to both Arun Kolarkar and Babasaheb Ambedkar, is gone. The Wayside Inn is gone. How callous we are with our history. For Arun Kolarkar and Babasaheb Ambedkar are here in our heads. They are in our hearts. They are in our thoughts, in the way we think. They are in our constitution. They are in our blood. Because poetry, once it infects you, it becomes a matter of corpuscles. It becomes a matter of platelets. Arun Kolarkar's poem, Fire. This fire, this one laughing, this is yet another. What shall I do with it? Where shall I keep it? Shall I set it to the house, to the door, to the world? What will it cook? Where will it spread? This torch, where shall I throw it? This fire must be obeyed. This fire, wear it on your head, become a torch. Dance. Come, let's play. Light my cigarette, fire my engine, leaven my bread, cook my stew, condense my soul, boil my blood, bend my steel, melt my gold, bake my brick, crackle my mustard, burn my cocks, fling my arrows, helter skelter. This fire, this one laughing, this is yet another. I am the toppling Ravana. I am charcoal. I am charcoal. This is the Sera. This fire, flames, flames. This bonfire, broken window. I'm a smashed door. This bonfire, this bonfire, this bonfire. Limping chair. I'm a table on crutches. This bonfire, this bonfire, this bonfire. Running fence. I'm a beam escaping. This bonfire, this bonfire, this bonfire. Flying cupboard. I'm a warehouse being looted. This bonfire, this bonfire, this bonfire. This world without tunnels. This house of rats. Helpless, helpless. Fire engines, sand buckets, water tanks. You are fire, I'm ash. You are today, I'm cash. You are yesterday, you are fire. You are tomorrow, you are fire. You are now, you are before. You are after, you are flower. I'm stalk, you are matchhead. I'm matchstick, you are sacred fire. I'm holy man, you are fire. Take and smoke and smoke and smoke. I am my self-sacrificial fire. I am the host. I am the altar. I am the priest. I am the fire. I am the sacrifice. The fire itself is ignorant. I sacrifice. I sacrifice. I sacrifice. Your mane will catch fire. Be careful. Your tail will burn. Take care. Come, my lion, make a compromise. Jump through this burning hoop. From here to there, and again from there to here. This fire shaped like a zero. This freedom to burn is daily. This whole circus is you alone. Rajabai Tower, the gateway, the Taj, the majestic hotel, these buildings, beasts, foxes, tigers, wild boars, this jungle molded, this clear darkness, these vultures. You are half neighboring fire. Scatter the city. Make them await. Rajabai Tower, the gateway, the Taj, the majestic hotel, Churchgate Station, the town hall, the Victoria Terminus, the Regal, the Eros. Detached, immobile. Keep burning, please, for my sake. Keep me warm. Terrify the city. Otherwise, these buildings will tear me and devour me. The city stays as is because of you, or else terrorize the city, the museum, be a neighbor. Arun Kolatkar. I would give so much if only someone had filmed him reading this poem, filmed the poet reading the poem, because I only heard him in the winter of his life when those last magnificent books came out, Sarpa Satra and the Kala Ghoda sequence. When you looked at him as a lion in winter and you wanted to put your arms around him and take him home and make him well again, and offer him another 100 years to write another 100,000 poems. And he couldn't, because he was ill and he was going. And there was no way to say anything. It's horrible when you know, and it's horrible when you don't know. When you don't know a poem, you don't know a poet. But when you know the poet, and you know the poem, and you can see death hovering in the wings, it's also horrible. I'm sorry, this is getting a bit morbid, but Arun brings back sad memories of the possibilities of friendship. Arun is, if you know anybody who you'd like to chat to, just make it like an attempt. Like, go and try. Like, just go and try. You know, I should have tried, but I had so many chips on my shoulder at that time. Know whether he would be rude and dismissive, but I never did try. I mean, I had enough scathing from Adil Jussawalla already. So I didn't think I could take two scathing poets at the same time. The other great miss, I think, that for me was Kamla Das was also in the city. And Kamla Das, here's another piece of our history that we've lost. Yeah? Bahutantrika. Kamla Das had a series of arts events at her house when she was in the city called Bahutantrika, which was supposed to be like, 1 day dance, one week dance, 1 week poetry, 1 week. And one of the lovely moments in one's life was holding a piece of tangible, intangible heritage. And I was sitting in Adil's home, and he handed me a handwritten invitation in Kamla Das's beautiful handwriting, asking him to come and read poetry at a Bahutantrika. And I'm going to read a moment of Kamla Das poem. I love Kamla Das. Loved it, and loved it unashamedly and passionately in the face of the fact that I knew that it was flawed, but who cared? Right? Why should you care if there's a flaw in a poem if it's still talking to you in some way? Okay. So yes, there were times when it was over the top. Yes, there were times when she could have been a little more careful with craft, but I didn't care. She was like my humsafar, my humnawat. When you have people like that, you don't care. So Kamla Das was like someone who spoke directly to Jerry Pinto across time, gender, space, age, all of it. This one is called, and of course, because I'm a Mahinka and I grew up in Mahin, not very far from Cadell Road. The fact that this is the joss sticks at Cadell Road means something. The joss sticks at Cadell Road. Near the sea behind Cadell Road, they burn as joss sticks, the poor men's bodies, those dark, thin corpses, all bound with strings of tuberose and the brilliant marigold. We saw them bring one last Sunday, and hour after our tea time, sent it up to smell like a low-paid street girl, while some crones followed, wailing flatly and monotonously, as only the poor and the absolutely hopeless know how to wail. When they fed the body to the fire leapt high, snarling beast-like. Then the corpse bearers threw the darlings into the sea. A few of seagulls rode the waves. My husband said, I think I shall have a beer. It's hot, very hot. And I thought, I must drive past town and lie near my friend for an hour. I badly need some rest. And that's a woman's viewing of love as well, I think. That a man who would drive into town, lie near his friend, would not lie to get some rest. would not drive all the way to get some rest, but a woman would. I'd love her for that. Another very important poet in my life has been Imtiaz Thakur. If you have seen Asylum and other poems, you'll know that she likes my poetry. This is always a good thing when people like your poetry. Sorry, that's. And also, that our lives were knitted in really strange and interesting ways. I first met her, of course, in her poems in the Illustrated Weekly, where I found them startling and different. I remember going to the Taj Art Gallery and seeing her drawings and finding those startling and magnificent, black and white solid. And then I taught her daughter, Aisha Tharkar, mathematics. In one of my many lives, I was a mathematics teacher. And she was a very good paymaster. She paid on time. Like Bittu Sehgal, who also was a good paymaster, and Madhubala, when I taught their children. Those are my start pupils. And I followed Imtiaz's poetry, and I loved it always. And this is a poem. There are some Imtiaz poems that I've read all the time. I was going to look for those. And then I thought, Jerry, stop it. Each time you want to write about opening the door and colliding with the city, Imtiaz is more than that. So I looked again and I found this really lovely poem on Malabar, Hanging Gardens. For quite a few years, living next to the Tower of Silence, my nearest neighbors were the recent Parsi dead. We grew close, as neighbors do. Evenings, watching television or taking my late walk, I often thought of them, pale bodies offered to the elements, Rumi, Baman, Hormuzji, Shireen, waiting to be stripped by the patient vultures. And going out, I have always expected from the sky the falling finger, the forsaken toe, the abandoned head, the knowing, twinkling eye. How beautifully the poem moves from the ordinary to the macabre and back to the almost to the affection, because the knowing, twinkling eye of the Parsi is something we have all, as Bombay people, experienced and loved. Passing on now to another Bombay poet whom I knew well, and again in the contorted Bombay way, and he was like that. Because the first time I met him, I was a very young journalist, and I went to interview Dom Moraes on the release of Serendip, which was a book of poems that came after, I think, 17 years of poetic silence. During that time, Dom had written a lot of prose, but no poetry. And I think he was interviewed out by this time. Was bored and tired of answering the same questions. And for me, on edge, because it was a big assignment. I was writing it for the Free Press Journal. And it was kind of dismissive. And I remember leaving and saying to myself, if I should ever have the good luck to be interviewed, I will never be here. This is just background. But Leela, the same interview, I think she came in, she looked at me, she looked at him, and she spotted what was going on. And she went out of her way to be really sweet and charming. And at the end of the interview with him, she handed me an egg cup with an orchid in it. The orchid had come from Sri Lanka. The Consul General had sent them Sri Lankan orchids, which were then rare. Now they're everywhere, these purple orchids. And I went on carrying the purple orchid in the egg cup, and I thought, this is whom I would like to be like. Someone who is gentle and kind and sweet and just wonderful. So I called up a few days later and said, have your egg cup? It's just like, basically, I want to go and see Leela Naidu again. But she was very kind and said, please, you don't have to return the egg cup, but please come over and see me. And a great friendship started, which ended with, not ended, but which culminated in my writing, ghostwriting, sort of co-writing her autobiography, Leela Patchwork. But Dom's poetry has never ceased to amaze me for its power, its beauty, and its ruthless clarity. Ruthless. There is a sternness about God in his poems, which is sometimes a little unforgiving. But this is one where Dom suddenly turns his eye on tangible heritage, Kanheri caves, and Kanheri caves, Dom Moraes. Over these blunted, these tormented hills, hawks hail and wheel, glissading down the sky. It seems the green, ambiguous landscape tilts and teeters the perspective of the eye. Only 2 centuries after Christ, this cliff was colonized by a mild antique race who left us like a faded photograph, their memories that dry up in that place. They left no ghosts. The rock alone endures. Their drains and cisterns were storms wrecked the stairs. Blocks are fallen. Sunlight cracks those floors and fidgets in a courtyard where a pair of giant Buddhas smile and wait their crash. Then temples, audience halls, a lonely tomb. I touch its side. The stones won't smooth his flesh. A stranger dangles peaceful in that room. Worm he will be if born. Blink in the sun. I'll crawl into his dark. Perhaps he'll climb beyond the trippers to the final stone, flat off the hillock, there to grow in time. Dry pubic ferns prickle the bitter sand, hawks in a hot concentric ecstasy of flight and shriek who will wake his vision. And when the clouds lift, he'll glimpse the miles of sea. Bombay is defined, I think, by the sea. Again and again, references to it come up. And you would imagine they would, right? So I'm suddenly going to shift and move from the canonical, and I'm really sorry, sometimes the poetry reading seeks to decanonize, seeks to decolonize, but we're doing odes to Bombay. I mean, can you avoid Dom, Nissim, Adil, Dilip Chitre, who might jump because I think you're running out of time, but I hope we will have. So I'm going to go fast forward straight down to a book of poems called City of Water by, I'm sure I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Onindita Sengupta. Onindita Sengupta, City of Water. This poem is called Bombay. They say, and the lovely thing about it is that it is written in the form of a ghazal. They say blood flows like water through the lanes in my city. Now the blood of my veins looks like the veins of my city. Love, look beyond the glare of obvious complaints. Even crows are beautiful when it rains in my city. Morning mist spots frog-like on the Arabian Sea. But remember the rush of night trains in my city. Girls high on window ledges read poems to night air. I hear there are special places for pain in my city. Quiet things elude. They lurk in unexpected nooks. But loneliness, it churns a weather vane in my city. They learn so many names for mountain, ocean, sky. They never learn to spell mundane in my city. I've inhabited the myth of elsewhere for years. In my closing, at least, let me remain in my city. You can say Mama if you want. I wanted to when I first heard that. Yeah, one of the ghazals that works. The other one which I would recommend you to read is Jeet Kayal's Malayalam ghazal. Brilliantly done. and a poem that you can read aloud. I mean, I was doing something in languages, I never read that one. The great thing about doing this, putting this evening together for Khaki Labs was simply that I could just sit and read all the books of poetry that you see behind me. It's largely the poetry collection that's behind me, and say I'm doing some work. But I don't see why I needed an excuse. My work is poetry. At the beginning of this session, Rohan mentioned the poetry circle, and I'd like to stop and talk about the poetry circle for a moment as well. Very important moment in my life. Very, very important to me, and very important to the city as well. It was started by a whole bunch of poets. Not one. I wasn't one of them. It was Menaka Shivasani for sure, the contractor. R. Raj Rao, I think Vinyar Godrej was also involved, 4 or 5 of them. And but then later Ranjit Koskote joined, and Arundhati Subramaniam, many people joined. For 10 years, or more than 10 years, we met every Saturday. Then we began to meet for the next few years, every alternate Saturday, and then we stopped. But for those years, there was a place where you could read poetry and not be apologetic. Everyone who came to the circle wanted to listen to poetry, and they took it seriously. So that you actually had a place where someone said, "Do you want a comma on line 4 just before your second adjective?" That was a matter of real importance. It was important. Look at commas, look at end stop lines, to look at paranomation. Oh, whatever it was. The rest of the world would think of it like, who makes money on poetry? That lyrics for Hindi films. But for us, it mattered. That there was a place where you could bring a new poem and it could blink off the page, as Arundhati wrote about in a poem about the poetry circle. And that's why I met some of the friends whom I still have. It says something about their diligence and their ability to stand the pantomime model of friendship. But one of my closest friends, Arundhati Subramaniam, has written one of the quintessential Bombay poems. I'm going to read that out. Where I Live, for Anders Who Wants to Know, by Arundhati Subramaniam. I live on a wedge of land, reclaimed from a tired ocean, somewhere at the edge of the universe. Greetings from the city of L'Oreal sunsets and diesel afternoons, deciduous with concrete, botoxed with vanity. City of septic magenta hair clips, of garrulous sewers and tight-lipped taps. Tight-lipped taps. Of 80s film tunes buzzing near the left temple, of ranting TV soaps and monsoon melodramas. City racked by hope and bulimia. City uncontained by movie screen and epigram. City condemned to unspool in an eternal hysteria of lurid nylon dream. City where you can drop off a swollen local and never be noticed. City where you're a part of every imli soaked bhelpuri. City of the Mahalakshmi beggar peering up through a gorse bush of splayed limbs. City of dark alleys. City of mistrust. City of forsaken tubelit rooms. City that coats the lungs, stiffens the spine, chills the gut with memory. City suspended between flesh and mortar and faux leather and delirium, where it is perfectly historical to be looking out on a sooty handkerchief of ocean, searching for God. Must not. And it really very close to the beginning, and this is what happens with, I think, poetry with conjunction with everything. In the middle of Adil's poem, there is a reference to the Tibetans coming and wearing thick, dark red wool in the middle of the city's heat. And at that time in the 1960s, the tragedy was very fresh. Tibet for all of us. And over time, it slipped away. The Tibetans just seemed to be nice people whom you saw at around September, October. You began to see them at Grant Road Station. Your Grant Road Station, they'd be selling woolens and you buy them. That sort of thing. Then one day, sitting in Adil's home, I met Tenzin Sundu. And Tenzin Sundu woke Tibet for all of us. He reminded us of the tragedy of Tibet. And he made it real. And he, for the 4 or 5 years that he was in Bombay, he converted Bombay's young people into people who stood for Tibet. One poet. But I'm saying it again. One poet is needed. Because a poet will understand the symbolism of climbing onto the top of a 5-star hotel and unleashing a banner of revolt and then spending 10 years fighting court cases across the country also. And Tenzin's poem is called The Tibet. And Tenzin, by the way, always, whenever he's interviewed, talks about the poetry circle of Bombay, which many of the poetry circle other poets don't do, which I think is not fair. But Tenzin never fails to mention how important the poetry circle was for him, and I think that's seriously sweet. Okay, the Tibetan in Mumbai, Tenzin Sundu, from his book Torah. The Tibetan in Mumbai is not a foreigner. He is a cook at a Chinese takeaway. They think he is Chinese, run away from Beijing. He sells sweaters in summer in the shade of the Parel Bridge. They think he is some retired Bahadur. The Tibetan in Mumbai abuses in Bombay-Bambai Hindi with a slight Tibetan accent. And during vocabulary emergencies, he naturally runs into Tibetan. That's when the Parsis laugh. The Tibetan in Mumbai loves to flip through the midday, loves FM, but doesn't expect a Tibetan song. He catches the bus at a signal, jumps into a running train, walks into the long, dark gully, and nestles in his folio. He gets angry when they laugh at him, ching chong ping pong. The Tibetan in Mumbai is now tired, wants some sleep and a dream. On the 11 p.m. Virar pass, he goes to the Himalaya. The 8:05 a.m. pass local brings him back to Churchgate, into the metro, a new empire. If you're a Bombay person, if you get that Churchgate, metro, new empire, it clicks and falls into place magnificently. It's an ending line that's magnificent. I'm going to do just 2 more poems, and out of the many that I have here, including Blind Screens by Ranjini Murali, but I think the 2 that I should favor now are young people's poems, because you won't have heard of them as and this should be about introducing you to new voices. It's a lovely poem by Ranjini Murali from her book called Blind Screens. It's called Mumbai Local Train Poster. Office goer, student, traveler, lover, dreaming of rusty scooter today, or cough hack mother-in-law making sandwiches alternate Sunday afternoons at tea time. The wrestling match held at the local gymkhana where you spotted your item, blot some ketchup on a wafer-thin paper napkin, molten ID tags being shaped into urns and enamel fish bowls to forget your spare change in. I could keep disemboweling your fantasies, but I sense that the residue of yesterday's canteen gossip, Khans dominate Bollywood, rankles your wrists which rest, briefcase and handkerchief from between shuffling knees, much like the trains themselves, shuttling ossuaries of implorations, how to dream of buying a centrally air-conditioned apartment, ponders the sweat-faced uncle in the corner. The recovering alcoholic salesman writes down a list of bubblegum flavors that reminded him of tonic. Do not undermine this interim foot-tapping, the corollary of corrosion. That crack in the leather seats that a roach relishes is the removal of calcified boundaries, much like bare nail beds. Your unclenching fist is helping anchor us in this locus of plastic bag Archimedean volume shift. If you unravel before this siren-stoked red flag, the week amidst us itinerants will pocket your wallet, filled with grocer's scrawl and a picture of your sister smiling in a studio against creased wallpaper with a mountain as the backdrop. Should you divert us with platitudes such as the pan spitters deserve to get electrocuted, or platform chai is the best, your views will turn itself on its head. The iron-horned boned compartment will crunch down on your phalanges, and you will find yourself re-entering the first class during a bomb blast or a riot, sweating pins and needles along the seams of your undershirt, asking how to navigate fist on fist, stumps where damp digits once populated for grasping space. Why aren't my arms grasping this, you will ask? And someone will, like me, will click his tongue at your bald boxing hands, exclaiming, Bechara, we all waking up from a bad dream today. And someone else will say, the resilient trains are still running, bless the spirit of the city. And when the next train arrives, your eye will fall on my smiling 9-inch by 9-inch poster declaring, bad dreams and stress? Don't worry, I have lucky stones for every finger. It's a great poem, great exciting, sort of like looking at the city, but gathering it and putting it together in such strange ways that another metropolis is kind of erupts from that poem. No wonder she won the almost Island Prize for manuscripts in 2016, I think. Last poem of the day, a chap called Dom de Souza. His book is called 3 Doors, and this poem is called Bandrofe. De Souza and a Pinto, they'll read about Bandrofe. What can you expect? Bandrofe. The path up to the mount, tar glistening from rain, childhood recollections, is a valley of paupers, heckling you to buy garlands, a clutch of candles. Hey, how can you approach mother empty-handed? Arms, stars, houses, legs, babies, shops, cram their shelves. It's not some macabre exhibition. It's what we want. Chilling. The nuns are the daughters of St. Paul's stall. Veils swaying are their usual, cheerful, efficient selves. The faces of the orphans too are the same, grave, gentle, secretly sorrowful. This girl's scapula around her neck says, wait, and walks gingerly to one corner to fetch our sorpatel rolls, piled like stones upon a plate. Beggar children crouch like gargoyles on the steps of the oratory. Over the railing, burly, open-mouthed penguin litter bins, knocked over to their sides, whole branches of these trees thrown down, mother attacked by sword-wielding pirates, mother without gold, mother without arm, wooden mother, mother restored, bearing doll-like divine child, floating on wind-swept waves out of the salty dreams of the fisherman. The letters on the wall, innocent as icing, begin to fall like hail. Empty-handed again, the descent through the fair, the mind caught in clamor of color, rewards for an uninspired pilgrimage of faith, faith far away, the early morning journeys by train, waking before it was light, the woman fast asleep with her child, carried away in the empty compartment, the amused concern for them as if the train, after pulling out of the station, headed for some flaming purgatory, dozing through the service, but later sprightly, wait, toys, sugary delights, grants, bubbles, baubles, sacred souvenirs of polished wood and painted clay, fake, long faded, the grey of a nun's habit, learned, well worn. Thank you so much for listening. I know that probably in your head you had an anthology of Bombay poems that you thought you would like to hear here. and I probably disappointed you, but that's the nature of the beast, no? We all have poems inside our head about the city. Kipling's poem is a famous one, for instance. Now there are questions, Rohan, I'll be happy to get.
Thank you so much. I'm only feeling bad that we could not hear you in person at Khaki Lab. I can just imagine that would have been such a brilliant feel to actually listen to you in person. They say that the attention span nowadays is reduced to a mere 8 seconds, especially with a virtual format. But I think if anybody has been able to keep the audience engaged without a slide, which is considered a necessity, I think you did it so fabulously. It was really a privilege to listen to you.
Thank you, sir.
We have a few questions, so
sure.
Let's get into that. Firstly, thank you for mentioning that heritage is a combination of tangible and intangible. We also firmly believe that. So there is a question related to that. Tara Sehgal says, Jerry loved the idea of intangible history. Who is writing Bombay's intangible history now? The one that poetry circles will enjoy 50 years hence.
See, I keep encouraging everybody to do this. Everybody has to do it, Tara. It's not just one person. Because, see, when Rohan started at the beginning saying that if there are stories that you have, etc., you should share them with us. I want to say, yay, please do that. Yeah, it's necessary that you all, if they can't just, okay. About 5 years ago, I started writing a book on the Gandhis of Kemuru. Okay, because I think that's another piece of our intangible history, the support that they gave to the artists. The fact that, they gave Raza and they gave Tayyab Mehta, they gave them a monthly stipend so that these men could just sit and paint. Farooq Mullah, who is Jaru Mullah's father of SCM Sapphire, he gave Rasik Rawal a place to stay and a monthly stipend so that he could paint. And now I just discovered that Rasik Rawal, Farooq Mullah left a large autobiography, huge. I've been pushing Jaru to edit it and to get it ready for publication. Dosi by Kavastri Jussawalla, who's that woman I mentioned, her book is coming out from Speaking Tiger. So it's like everybody's got to get together and do this thing together. It can't just be like one person or two people. Everybody's history is important. All nazariyas are important. So even if tomorrow, like I finished writing another project that excites me tremendously, was Arundhati Ranjit and I were sitting one day and chatting about the poetry circle. And I think someone, I said I've been in constantly people asking me about the poetry circle. They want to interview one and whatnot. And Arundhati said something like, we should write our version of the poetry circle. We should write down what we think happened there. And I said, fabulous idea, because I'm always telling other people to do it, and I also have to do what I can. And I said, what a great idea it would be. All three of us wrote. Ranjit, you write your version of it. Arundhati, you write your version of it. And I write my version. Put these three versions together, standing side by side. And because I'm Vela, I don't have that much to do, I wrote my version. I'm waiting for them to write this, and then hopefully we'll have a viewing of it. Then I wrote an essay on clearinghouse, because one moment in Adil Jussawalla's house, brilliant moment. He pointed to a blue Rexine bag, like one of those big duffel bags, and he said the entire archive of the clearinghouse project is in there. And I said, you're joking. So he said, yeah, everything is there. And I said, then I'd love to read it. So he said, yeah, Arvind wants to look at it first, and after that, etc., etc. So a year passed, and when Arvind hadn't done that, he finally let me look at it. And I wrote a long essay on this magnificent Bombay moment when Adil, Arvind, Dilip, and Arun Koladkar came together and set up the Clearinghouse Archive. 4 of them. And the glory of this moment was that they had decided very early that all 4 of them would have to agree on everything, or they wouldn't do it. Like if there was a manuscript, either all 4 of them agreed on it, or they did. If 3 agreed and 1 didn't agree, no majority wins nonsense, they want to do it like that. So in order to keep each other in, and Arvind at this point suddenly got a job in Allahabad University and moved to Allahabad. This was the days before before email and things like that. So everybody wrote letters to each other. And because Adil is the archivist non-pareil, he kept copies of his own letters. The whole story was there. And I wrote a lovely essay on it, which went into the Cambridge Companion to Indian Writing, Indian Poetry. And I think sort of vanished. I'm hoping one day to be able to expand that into a small book, but when time permits. Sorry. I don't know if that answers your question, Tara, but we need many more histories, many more, from different perspectives, and subaltern ones, and women's histories, and Dalit histories, and minority histories as well. Okay. Yeah. Next question, Rohan.
It's kind of related to the first one. What must the city do to encourage young wits? Can this effort be institutionalized, or must it remain an individual effort or an informal group effort?
See, almost all the artistic moments of this city, okay, have been individual efforts. When the poetry circle collapsed, imploded into itself, because we'd all got to be middle-aged and went off to do other things. Adil again stepped into the breach and started Loquations. Loquations was a weekly meeting at NCPA's Choraha, which Arundhati Subramaniam had started with Vijaya Mehta when Vijaya Mehta took over NCPA and tried to open it out from the geriatric Parsi constituency that it served in South Bombay, and tried to bring in people from the outside, like sweaty Bombay boys like me. Every week on Tuesday, Adil read us poems from I met so many poets there, so many poets. W.D. Snodgrass, whom I'd never heard of, Huts Needle. Oh, what a set of poets. So each time it's going to be, and so that's what my message to young people is this: do it yourselves. Just don't wait for anybody. Don't wait for money. Don't wait. Just colonize an Irani table. Colonize one outside space at Barista. Sit around a table. Put the poems on the table, or the script, or the play, or the short story, or whatever your form is. Just bring people around and be attentive to other people as well. One of the most illustrative moments was after the poetry circle closed down. I met this young woman who said to me, I want to start the poetry circle myself again. I said, great, fabulous, do it. She said, I'm not doing it in South Bombay. It's too difficult for everyone to travel. We'll do it in Kalina because there are students there and university. I said, fabulous idea. Can't even get better. Please do it. Then a year later, I met her and I said, how's the circle going? She said, we closed after one event. And I said, what? Why? She said, yeah, because people came and then they would read their poem and then they'd say, I'm going now. I don't want to listen to anyone else's poems. And so I'm saying fundamentally this, right? Poetry is not only about broadcasting. Poetry is about reading, and poetry is about listening. And all the listening and the reading that you do will make you a better poet. So if you don't listen with care and listen with, I don't know. Okay, I have this theory of the innocent listener and the complicit listener. The innocent listener is Ariwala. Great poem, yaar, because I don't want to write poems. So I'm just happy that you wrote a good poem. But complicit listener is, I also want to write poems. So I hear a good poem and my immediate thought is, how did you do that? What did you just manage to do? You made me think differently about pomegranates. How did you manage to make me think about pomegranates? Such. I've got to listen to this poem again. I've got to read it again. I've got to read it 5 times. I've got to look for its magic. And then, of course, it eludes you, it defies you. But in that process of constant, careful examination, you begin to develop, without knowing it, your own magic. Maybe it's not smaller magic, but it is yours. But it comes out of listening and reading with deep attentiveness. So please don't ask me for recommendations about things that I think poets that you should be reading, because then you'll be me. See what I mean? What you need to do is go to Kitab Khana, which is one bookshop which has a very good selection of poetry. Waver and Wise used to have it, but I think it's going to close down. Victim of the pandemic. Go there and pick up, give yourself an hour or two. Pick up a session, or pick up a poetry book from there, and soongle, smell it, read, see what comes off it. Is this an agonized young man saying, "Burn, city, burn"? Or is this a poised young woman saying, "The city burns and I'm watching"? Who are you looking for? Who is your magic source? Who do you need to talk to today? Who do you want telling you what this city is like, what this world is like? What does it matter who I need or want? It matters what you need or want. And that poem is there waiting for you somewhere. Don't own, and with all of us, how foolish we are that we are only reading in English. Our education system, which we hated and you have to just mug up by heart, it gave us the gift of script. We can read English and we can read Devanagari, and Devanagari means we can read Marathi and we can read Hindi, and we can even manage Gujarati in a script at one or two hours like that, and jers a little different, but it's almost there. And we don't. Why would you not? I always say it's like this, okay? Like for us, language is like a buffet. So your first visit to the buffet, you discovered English chicken masala. You started eating chicken masala. You love chicken masala. Very good chicken masala. 10 days you eat chicken masala. 10 years you eat chicken masala. Ab to dil bhar le. Ab to mutton korma try kar. Ab to wo dal chak le. Go read something else in your mother tongue. Doesn't have to be like, you don't have to read a whole novel to begin with. Take a book of poems. Just before you go to sleep, read a poem in Hindi, read a poem in Marathi, read a poem in Konkani, read a poem in Gujarati. Soja. Don't try to understand. The good thing is you don't have to understand it. You don't have to write one paragraph, themes and tensions. You don't have to write a reference to context. No one's saying mug it by heart and recite for me. Just let the poem come in. Like that. Chance le yaar poems pe. No?
I really loved how you said Soongle. That was really an apt way of saying it. And you also spoke about
books smell luxurious.
Yes, that was literal and figurative both. You also spoke about monopolizing a coffee table, perhaps, and just giving it a shot. And in one of the interviews that you've given, you've mentioned that I have written standing in buses and sitting on the fourth seat of local trains. So where does the inspiration come from? What are the sources of inspiration?
You know that this is the thing. I think there is no inspiration. I wish there was like a reliable thing for inspiration, but I would say actually your inspiration is here. Okay, like when you're sitting in the train and there's someone sitting next to you and they're talking, this generation cuts out that talking. There is some things in their ears and they're listening to their iPod and the Ed Sheeran is singing a song, and that's all very well. I understand. If you're a woman, I even more understand, because you don't want some man being on you at that point in time. I get it, not a problem. But I'm saying when you're a woman in the ladies' compartment, take off those earplugs and listen to people around. By the time you've arrived at your destination, you will have 5 stories inside you. You know, even if you just look at people's faces, they're inspiration. Like you look at this man sitting in front of you, and his wife doesn't have a nose, like her nose is completely cut off. And you think, yeah, what exactly happened here? How did this happen? And what exactly happened here? How did this happen? If you're a fiction writer, you don't have to ask. You invent. If you're a non-fiction writer, you have to just lean forward and say, Bhai Sahab or Behenji, I've just noticed this about you. And 98% of India will tell you the story. I remember the first time I did the long distance train journey on my own. There was a 60-year-old man. I was at the lower berth, he at the higher berth. So he said, please adjust. Pause, take the lower berth, I'll go upstairs. And he had a bandage on his leg. So I said, kya hua dada? Chacha, kuch hua laga kya? He said, beta, kya bataun aapko? And he undid his bandage. And he showed me the wound. And he made me press a certain part to see the pus that was still coming out. And then we wrapped his bandage together again. In India, we have people who will tell you their stories immediately. And we don't want to listen because we're so caught up in our own stories. You know, I said, more inspiration, man. It's low-hanging fruit. It's all around you, all the time. The world is throwing inspiration at you, throwing stories at you. If you were born in India, you were born here because you said, and the Almighty said, where do you want to go? Do you want to go somewhere nice and calm and peaceful, or do you want to go somewhere interesting? Almighty has a sense of humor as well, okay? Now, calm and nice and peaceful, if you had chosen, you would have been born in Switzerland. All the trains run on time. Everyone got vaccinated on day one. No one broke social distancing because there was a yatra to go to. Nothing like that happened. You got born here because you said you wanted interesting. Very interesting, beta. It doesn't get more interesting than this. There's a story behind every bush. You know, my favorite story right now is the chap I call Mr. Trophima. Mr. Trophima's name is Nair. He sits outside a cafe, Trophima, and he reads English books. He's a rag picker who reads English books. Okay, so my sister and I, because we have a steady supply of trash fiction that comes in. Because in the morning you read poetry, you're reading Shakespeare, in the afternoon you're reading like the great Hindi novel, in the evening you're reading Marathi literature, great Marathi book that needs to be translated. In the night you will want Lee Child and like, Jack Reacher and that beating people up. So after the Jack Reacher, what do? Mr. Trophima gets it. Now, what is his story? How did a man who can read Lee Child end up on the street? Yeah? And all I have to do is ask him that question.
I think you've also answered my next question, because in another interaction you also because in another interaction you said that because of the pandemic you have lost out on a year of stories. I think that's what you just covered.
Really. Yeah. A lot of it, though, I did use the pandemic time because I was see also my mind sometimes I feel like is Virar local, Virar fast. Meaning gachadam buchdi with stories. There's that Mr. T story. When he would do that, when he would do this. It's wiggly stories. Okay. So the pandemic gave me one asara. Like I started looking through all the hundreds of themes and stories and ideas and whatnot. And I did a little bit of a sorting out of them. I finished some stories. I finished some, I whole idea for a subversive princesses stories. Because all little girls these days seem to love being princesses. So I think we need to use princesses, but teach them how to be the alternative princess. The alternative princess is a bit feminist, is a bit concerned about the environment, and therefore does not want a 60-meter train after her. How many children's clothes could be made in that one train that those stupid princesses have? You know, kind of like strange and weird question, but we just like excited to do. So that I found like 5 of those stories and I put them together. And so in some ways, what I really missed was talking to people. Just talking to people, sitting in front of them and talking to them, because that's in this country is okay. I have the feeling sometimes like our great blessing is our people, great curse is our people. Same to same. Never quite sure. Like you hear of the most alarming horrors, okay? Alarming horrors that people do to each other. And at the same time, you hear a friend of mine is cycling across the country. He left Bombay and he's now somewhere in Gujarat. People are trusting money on him. because he's cycling around India. Please take this 10,000 rupees. He's a rich man. Doesn't need your 10,000 rupees. But tomorrow there will be like other people going through, and no one will feed the red or the migrant worker going. And what do you make of this? Yeah? And that is our material. If we were like uniformly just one person, we were just sweet, goody people who helped everybody, that would be boring. But here you have the average Indian who will be completely kind to a stranger. But if he discovers what caste you're from, and that's not quite the caste he likes.
The compliments are just flowing in as you talk.
Mine said, how kind people are, how kind people are. I said, you are a fair-skinned Parsi. If you were a dark-skinned Muslim, your reception might be very good. Let's just say that. Okay. And it's not your fault that you're a fair-skinned Parsi. That's your heritage. That's your biography. But let's not assume that the world is full of gentle and lovely people just because you're a fair face. Just because, they would have a very different opinion of you if you were another skin color, if you were another caste, if you were another religious persuasion. All these things are also part of the mix. And this is part of what we've got to solve. This is part of what we've got to sort out. It's part of what we've got to integrate. It's part of what we've got to understand. It's part of all this. This is it. This is why when we picked interesting, we ended up here. Yeah.
So the compliments are just flowing in as you've been talking. People have found the session to be an absolute delight. People are very happy with the passion with which you speak. And in the interest of time, I won't read them all out. I'll send them. We can send them over to you because some of them are very detailed compliments.
And there are moments when I'm very down and I like reading those compliments again.
Absolutely. Can we take up 2 more questions? Is that okay?
I'm happy. Yeah. I have to cook at 7:30.
Okay. So
potatoes.
Okay. So just the last 2 ones. Smriti asks, I want to ask which of Namdev Dhasal's poems on Bombay speak to you, and also what poetry do we have on the Bombay riots that were so cataclysmic for many of us?
Okay, I had a Dasal poem that I was going to read out because then I suddenly realized I have no idea whether there are young children here. Someone might bring their 12-year-old son and say, "Back it's poetry about Bombay, you listen to it." Are there any children? Or is everyone adult? This is the problem, no? Yeah. Because the great Dasal poem is Gandu Bagicha. Now, Q did a film, that gentleman in Calcutta, Q did a film called Gandu. And at the beginning of that Gandu film, everyone was saying what Gandu meant. And now by this time, of course, every child who is listening, if there are any children listening, is thinking, yes, Masool, Paisa Masool. Uncle said G word, I will tell daddy. Uncle said Gandu. But okay, so at the beginning of Q's film Gandu, there are various people talking about what Gandu means to them. Not one of them says that Gandu means ass fucker. In Sondheimer and Chitre's translation of Gandu Bagicha, they call it ass fucker's garden, which I love. I was going to read it out, and then I realized I don't know if there are any children here, then parents might write into Khaki Lab saying you have despoiled my child's sense of the world. But yeah, that's all of Dasal speaks to me. Lots of Dasal speaks to me. And again, strange thing is, I met Dasal once or twice, never actually interacted with him, and then ended up translating his wife's autobiography, Mala Udbasto, I'd say. Okay. So, strange. It seems like poets' wives get on with it. But that was also a trick translation. So I've done some Survey poems. At one point, maybe I'll come in some point later, do a little about translating poetry and the challenges of translating poetry. but it was difficult to cram everything into it. Because suppose I did a Namdev Dasal, then why aren't you doing Narayan Survey? And why aren't you doing Kushi Regi? And why aren't you doing, and then what about Anakamaka? All there've been Sitanshu Yashish Chandra hasn't written about Bombay that I know of, but why haven't you got a poem from Kaunsma by Prabodh Parikh in Gujarati, etc. One of the reasons is because we are all lazy, okay? And we have not translated these poems adequately or well. Mustansif Dalvi has translated some poems from Marathi. Hemant Devte's translation. So one day maybe it would be nice we could do poems from Marathi in English. Have like a Jugalbandi. So someone reads the Marathi, someone reads the English. And then everyone can come and say, but the English version is very bad, the Marathi version is perfect. If you want, they can actually hit people on the head and say, do you think I don't know? Yeah. Okay, so, and by, are there poems about the riots? Lots and lots of poems about the riots. Many before, many also. I just felt that this was kind of like, by the time we got through celebrating the city, I thought, it's a celebration time. It's been a bad year for Bombay. We've all suffered so much. See, whether you know it or not, we are addicted to each other. No? We are like an addiction. People are an addiction for Bombay. You step out on the street and you say, how many people there are. But when it is, I remember the first time I stepped out into a London street, I arrived in London on a Sunday afternoon and I thought, has there been a riot? Because there was nobody anywhere. I thought, kuch hua hoga. And then my host said, no, but this is the way it is. And then I went to Wellesley. And there was no one at any time. Everybody was inside their houses. So when I was at Wellesley College and I was living in one mile away, I would walk to the college every day. And eventually I started singing Hindi film songs loudly on the road to myself, simply because I could. There was no one to hear me. There was no one to stop me. There was no one. And I felt so lonely on that road. I sang to myself as I went. I would do like one day, Aaj Amitabh Bachchan ke gaane gaenge, Aaj Dilip Kumar ke napne sunayenge apne aap ko, and sing them loud, besra, inventing words in between and you forget the lyrics, putting any tum tum tamati tum tamati tum 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 in the middle, and just having a blast and surviving cold landscapes which have been depopulated or which have never been populated. Simply because we lived so intimately close to each other. And then this year we were forced out of that closeness. So I lost that year of stories. Because the stories, they just happen in the city. Any taxi driver is a storyteller. Why is he a storyteller? He's alone most of the day. No one wants to talk to him. They just have an agenda-based relationship with the taxi driver. Get into the taxi and say, "Chalo bhaiya, go there," and get onto your phone, talk to somebody else, and stop him from talking. Why? Why? Aren't you interested in human beings? Say, "Kahan se aaye?" And just all you have to say is, "Kahan se aaye? Kab aaye?" Our life unfolds for you. This is important, no? That's human beings, no? We're interested in each other, no? We love each other. We not love each other, we have those feelings as well. But empathy requires us to be interested in the other person. So simple. So simple. And if I want you to be interested in M and the Big Boom, if I think, the week before the Big Boom was released, I kept thinking, why didn't I make it? Like, how can I possibly imagine that anyone would be interested in what 4 Roman Catholics living in Bombay would, how they manage their lives? Why would I do it? Stupid I am. And not one person has come back to me and said, because it was born, I did a Roman Catholic, I didn't get it. We are interested, but the really, really, really essential thing is empathy And empathy requires you to use craft in your art so that the telling of your story is the best possible telling of your story. You made it the best possible telling of your story in an act of empathy, saying, I know you're busy, Rohan. I know you're busy. I know that, when you take your time, when you decide that you're going to read a poem or read a book by me, you've given me the most precious gift that you could possibly give me, your time. Because you're not getting any more. It's a limited amount. So I want you, when you start reading my book, I want you to go away feeling, didn't waste my time. Because Bombay has understood this very instinctively. A time pass is our dhande ke time pe mat disturb kar. We know time's value in a way that very few other places in this country know. So don't waste my time. Work on your art, so that when you and your craft, so that when you bring this thing to the table, whatever it is, it's the best you can do.
Thank you for that. And I can safely say for everybody attending that we certainly made best use of our time for the past hour and a half. I'm mindful that it is 7:30, so we will need to close. But while we can't give you a actual round of applause, I'd encourage everybody to give a virtual round of applause. So everyone who's attending, right alongside your mute and unmute button, there is a reactions tab. And if you go to the reactions tab, you can give a virtual round of applause to Jerry. So I encourage you to go ahead and do that for a truly awesome session. Thank you, Jerry, for taking out time and conducting this session for us. And thank you to all our attendees for taking out time on a Saturday evening and attending this session. Yeah. We hope to see all of you with us again for another Khaki event, hopefully in person next time.
Thank you so much.